I want to welcome everyone to A Walk in the Woods, presentation of the show of artwork by R. Kini Rathbun. I'm just going to take you through a quick little view of the artwork in the gallery here. And then we'll do a little presentation to tell you a little bit about the artwork, where it comes from, and how Kini produces his work.
Hey everybody, thanks for showing up tonight. My name is Kini Rathbun, as you probably know, and this is the preview reception for my show, A Walk in the Woods, here at Waterstone Gallery. The gallery has reopened with limited hours. It's Saturdays and Sundays from 11 to 4, and you can also schedule a private tour of the gallery. If you go to my website, rkinirathbun.com, there's a link to a calendar, a schedule, where you can book your own hours on Thursdays and Fridays, and I will be here for that, as well as all Saturdays and Sundays, except for July 4th during my show, which lasts till August 2nd. So a couple of things before we get started. One, David has already told you that the way Zoom works is if anybody is speaking or not muted, then the camera will go to them rather than to be in the gallery. So later on, Dave and I will sit and we'll unmute everybody so that we can actually have a casual conversation towards the end of the program. I will also introduce David. You all know him too, I'm sure, but he is the film crew, production management team, and my director. And so you'll be hearing from him throughout the evening, I'm sure.
Hello, everybody.
So, you know, when we have an opening, David and I use it as an opportunity to have a party. And that usually involves a themed cocktail, as well as a table full of wonderful snacks that David mostly, but I, create. So because we can't do that for you tonight, we thought we would at least show you the cocktail I would have made for you if you were here. And David's going to show you how to make a very simple appetizer as well. So the drink I'm going to make for you tonight is something I created about 1.5 years ago. And it was inspired by a gift we get from David's mother every year for Christmas, which is a whole box of delicious red grapefruit from Texas. So, you know, we eat them as you would a normal grapefruit, but I'm always thinking of other ways to also use them. And 2 years ago, I came up with this concoction. It's sort of a Negroni, but with grapefruit and Aperol instead of Campari. So the 3 ingredients, it's very simple. Aperol is the first one. It's the less bitter relative of Campari, and it's made with herbs, gentian, rhubarb, and a close relative of quinine. So you use just a shot of that. A shot of your favorite gin. A shot of grapefruit juice. Just stir it around. Get some ice in there. squeeze of lime. And you're set for the evening. Here's to you. I feel a little bit like the Galloping Gourmet or Julia Child, I'm not sure which.
Hello, everyone.
Ah,
And welcome. So I'm going to share a very quick and very easy appetizer with you. It's one that's great for parties or just an appetizer for a special dinner that you're going to have. And hopefully, sometime not in the too distant future, we'll be able to do this together with you in person. This is very simple. It's essentially salt and pepper kettle chips, some creme fraiche, smoked salmon, and some fresh chive. Now, for the creme fraiche, sometimes that can be a little difficult to find in the supermarkets, so you can easily make your own. All you need is some sour cream and some whipping cream. Mix them together in equal amounts in a jar, shake it up, and then leave it out on the counter for about 4 hours or so. And then voila, you have creme fraiche. Now, another kind of little trick that you can do, whether it's for this recipe or for other things, is to make your own cheap kind of pastry bag. Just take a Ziploc bag, put your creme fraiche or your buttercream or whatever it is that you want to use. Just squeeze it down into the tip of that. Snip off the end of the zipper. And then you can just kind of make a nice little swirl or whatever you want to do with that. There we go. Whoop. Okay, not quite so fancy, but what the heck. Okay, I'm just going to take some of my smoked salmon, put a bit of that on each piece, like so. There we go. All right. And then garnish with, oh, I forgot one right there. Aha. Garnish with some fresh chive. And there you go. A quick, easy, and very tasty appetizer. So grab your cocktail, something to nibble, and we're going to continue on with the presentation of the show.
So what I'm going to do now is sort of go around the show and speak briefly about the work. By the way, I don't think I mentioned, so on Zoom, there is what's called a chat feature somewhere on the screen. And so if you tap that, you'll get a sidebar where you can type in questions or comments. And if you do that, David will actually read the comment to me, and I can actually, or the question, and I can actually answer questions that you might have as I'm going around the show. After we do that, then David and I will sit and have our cocktails and unmute, and we can just talk. Okay, so I'm gonna start here. This piece is called This Way, and all of the paintings you're going to see are made by their acrylic paint on carved linoleum. And that's the same linoleum you would use if you were gonna make a lino block, a lino cut or a linoleum block print. And so I'm carving. Why don't you come in close so they can see the carving in the block. And then I actually paint the whole block one color. In this case, it's dark purple. And then I go in and I paint, leaving that dark purple in all the grooves that I've carved. And it sort of surrounds and isolates all the color. And then I'll build up the painting from there. The subject of this piece, of course, is the two figures in the boat. And I'm sure you've all been in a situation where you've been with someone, maybe a partner, maybe not, who you decide you just are going to stand up in the boat foolishly, and things get a little hairy from there. So it's a humorous take on a minor marital dispute, if you will. So a couple of things about my work. So there are these really flat figures, which just recently I came to understand. I mean, I've been doing them for over 30 years, but I've recently, with new terminology, I've come to see them as avatars, meaning they're sort of stand-ins for, in the case of the figure with the blue eye, myself, because I have blue eyes, and David has brown eyes. And so I really didn't want to depict myself in my work. I really wanted to just say this is a figure. I mean, all my work is autobiographical, but I really wanted anybody who was looking at my work to put themselves into the work I'm making. And I'm hoping that my experience is shared in some way with the people that are looking at the work. So I spent the month of April in 2019 in Central Oregon. I became my mother's primary caregiver 2 years ago. And so I could no longer really go abroad to do my artist retreats where I would go away and just draw for a month at a time. So I decided that I would take my mom somewhere for a month, and we ended up in a house in Sun River near Bend, Oregon, in Central Oregon. So this is based on one of the drawings that I did there. This is an example of, just because the painting looks this way, this place didn't really exist. The way this drawing came about, and hence the painting, was that I actually was walking through the forest, and I was just stopping at every stump that I found really aesthetically interesting. And I sat down and I drew it, and I just continued walking through the forest until the page was filled up with drawings of stumps. And I loved the drawing so much that I then based a painting on it. You can see that I'm adding elements to the drawing. The drawing is just capturing the landscape, or my interpretation of the landscape. But then when I take it home and I'm actually working to create art from those, then I'm actually adding elements to make it a narrative that actually says something about what's going on in my life, or my head, or my heart. This is a piece that actually is based on a drawing from Australia. I've done 2 artist residencies there, artist retreats. We have some friends that live in about an hour and a half south of Sydney, Carl and Lindsay, and they have 7 acres of garden in the country down there. And they've invited me twice to come and stay in their guest house and draw their wonderful gardens. And they spend most of their time on those gardens, and they are so much a part of that place, and that place is so much a part of them, that I actually painted Carl as part of the tree that greets you when you drive up their driveway to their home. So this is another piece from Central Oregon. It's called Keep. And I'm going to show you the drawing that it is based on. So this is the drawing I did on site when I was there. And then this is the painting that came out of it. So Keep, of course, has 2 meanings. One, of course, is the medieval castle keep, which is sort of the protected area of a castle. And then it also means something that you hold dear to yourself. And of course, for me, my home is both my castle as well the thing that I hold dear to myself. So that's what the piece is actually about. You'll see that there's several themes that I'm using in this piece that you'll see in a lot of the other pieces. About 6 years ago, I sort of became enamored of drawing rocks. And that actually came out of my first trip to Australia, because Carl and Lindsay separate their 7 acres of gardens. The different gardens are separated by stone walls. And I became obsessed with them. And so to this day, I just love the forms of drawing and painting the rocks. The magpie is another, the birds in general, is another theme you see in a lot of my work, and they symbolize so many different things for me. This magpie, I think, is sort of expressing freedom that I yearn for. And which is ironic about this piece is I don't necessarily, again, use the bird where it belongs, because a magpie isn't found necessarily in a wooded area. You see them a little farther east in eastern Oregon rather than central Oregon. The next piece here is called Fast Water, and it is near Dillon Falls, which is really close to both Sun River and Bend. And it was early spring, so there was a very powerful falls, and the Deschutes was really high and running full. And when I'm encountering something in nature that is so forceful, I am in awe of it, and I feel powerless, if you will. And that's not a bad feeling necessarily, but I feel that something greater than myself. And when I was actually painting this piece, what I was actually thinking about is now that I'm taking care of my mother, that my life has changed and that I no longer have the illusion that I'm in control of my life. And sort of, it's just, I'm in awe of it, but I'm not in control of it. This piece is called Overlapping Niches, and it is inside the home where we were staying. They had a table with all of their sort of exotic plants up against the window, and outside the window were the ponderosa pine and rocks and needles of Central Oregon. And I really found that contrast between the interior and exterior worlds really intriguing. While I ended up calling it Overlapping Niches, I did have a few other titles that I was thinking about while I was doing the painting. One of them was invasive species, because that's something that I think about. And the other one was climate change, because again, the same subject can be seen in both of those contexts as well. But I ended up calling it Overlapping Niches, which I'm happy with. So on this wall, you see 6 of the 7 etchings that I did based on these same drawings that you'll see a lot of the paintings are based on. I became so interested in these drawings over the last 6 years that I really wanted to present them in some way that they could go out into the world. Martha Pfanschmidt, who's a really good friend of mine, has both gone to Australia once with me on an artist retreat, and she also was there for several of the weeks in Central Oregon. And we were discussing this desire of mine to use these drawings in some other way in addition to the paintings. And she is a master etcher, if you will. And so she volunteered to work with me to create a suite of etchings based on these drawings. An etching, for those of you who don't know, is a printmaking process where you have a copper plate and you cover it with this tarry substance called asphaltum. And then with a needle, I draw through the asphaltum, and that reveals the copper below. So once you've done that, you dip the whole thing in acid, and that, because copper is a soft metal, that creates a groove in the copper plate. And after you have etched the plate, you take it out, you remove that tarry substance, and you rub ink down in the lines that you've created in the copper plate. You rub off the upper surface so there's no ink on top. You put a piece of paper on the plate, you put it through a press, and you get a mirror image. And the ink that is in the etched lines then is transferred to the paper. And that's what you're seeing here. The process is so perfect for reproducing, well, it's not reproducing drawings, it is a drawing I did on each individual copper plate. I have added, with watercolor, some hand coloring to create focal points in each of the etchings. In these cases, these pieces are really about the quality of line and mark making rather than in my paintings where I'm really talking about expressing emotion through color.
I'd like to invite you that if anyone has questions as we're going along, to type them into the chat box, and Kini would be happy to answer any questions that you may have as we go along.
So far, we've really talked mostly about paintings based on drawings I did while I was in Central Oregon. The wall you're looking at now are all things that are from other places. You'll notice that the palette in these paintings is quite different from the palette based on the drawings, the paintings based on the drawings that I did in Central Oregon. The first one you're looking at is actually called Summer Garden, and it's part of a series that I've been doing based on drawings of our own hardy tropical garden here in Portland and the birds that are attracted to it. The next one here is called Point of View, and it is based on a drawing I did in the Sydney Botanical Gardens in Australia, this being the succulent area of that garden. The point of this, the story behind this piece, is it's really about what we choose to look at, what our worldview is, really determines what we see in the world and what opportunities we encounter or don't. And that's what the piece really is for me. The bird is a rainbow lorikeet, and it's actually another bird that doesn't really exist in Sydney. It actually is farther south in Australia, in the Melbourne area of Australia. The next piece here is back to Carl and Lindsay's garden, and this piece is called Transcendence. And this is one of their upper gardens. And there's obviously some very iconic things from Australia there. The white cockatoo, the pink cockatoos, which are known as galas, as well as the iconic gum tree of Australia. And there's me in the foreground with my sketch pad drawing that garden. And then also another version of myself sort of untethered from the world, which is what happens when you what happens to me when I'm making art is I'm no longer grounded. I actually have this wonderful experience of transcending the moment and the time and the place. So when I've gone to Australia 2 times for that month, David wasn't able to go with me. So I would meet up with him somewhere before or after so we could travel together. So after that last trip to Australia, we actually met up in French Polynesia and on Tahiti, and then we went to a couple of other islands before ending up in Easter Island. This particular painting is based on a drawing I did on Moorea from the house we were renting. It's called The Better Parts of Ourselves. And what it means for me is that, for me particularly, I feel I'm the best person I can be when I'm traveling, because I'm the most observant. I feel like I'm most alive and most engaged with the world, and in a way that I'm not when I'm necessarily in my routine at home. And of course, the best part of that is also sharing it with David. So this is also in Carl and Lindsay's gardens. This is called Our Rivers Run Together. As I mentioned, when I was in Australia for that month, David wasn't there. But obviously the narrative that I'm telling in this story is that even if he isn't there, our rivers run together, and he was there in me. The 2 last pieces that I'm going to show you are back to Central Oregon. The one here on the left that David showed you first is called A Walk into Spring. And it is actually nothing more than a joyous celebration of a moment. And I was really playing with all the trees that I was seeing and all the birds that had come back right before everything leafed out. And so, you know, there's nothing more than just joy for me in that painting. And finally, this is a piece called Flow, and it has that name. Often my titles have more than one meaning. And this, the flow here refers first to this black and gold horizontal line, which are the lava beds near Bend. And then there's the Deschutes, which was really high and had a very rapid current at that moment. And it also has to do with sort of trying to go along with the flow and just sort of give yourself up to the moment that you're in. But this particular moment in this place that I was really felt to me all about history, whether that be a geologic history or the history of these various trees that have lived and died and are having a new life by the birds they're supporting, or this tree that was burned out. And as I said, it's really about history, whether it's all the history that I witnessed geologically or in nature, or the history that I'm experienced myself and that I continue to experience. So really that's the show, that everything that I wanted to show you briefly. I really hope if you can, that you'll come down and visit the gallery, because seeing them, these paintings in person is so different than seeing them even on video. And I'd love to see you. Again, the hours here are Saturdays and Sundays 11 to 4, except for the 4th of July, or you can schedule something on rkennyradwan.com. At this time, Dave and I are gonna get our cocktails. We're gonna everybody can take their mutes off, and we can just have a conversation. And I'd love to see everybody's faces, because it's really hard talking to the camera, I have to tell you. So again, and thank you for showing up tonight too. So I'm gonna go get the cocktails. David's gonna go set up the camera, and I'll be right back. So go ahead and unmute yourselves if you haven't already. Hi.
I'm unmuted.
Yay! Hi, everybody.
Hi, David.
Hello. Happy opening.
Thank you. Oh, good. We've got cocktails.
Not as good as yours.
Damn Skippy, we got cocktails.
Good, wonderful. So how did that all work for you? It was sort of a little tough, you know, doing it on the way we did it, but hopefully it was not too disjointed for you.
It was great.
It was great.
It's beautiful.
David did great camera work. The zooming in and the zooming out, it was perfect.
He's got the hands, doesn't he?
I do la 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 la.
Well, great. I have to say hello to everybody. Are there more people down below, David? Hi, Dave. I haven't seen you in years.
Hey, how are you? It's great to see you.
It's really great to see you.
You watch carefully. Hillary lurks in the background sometimes.
Oh, really?
There she
hi,
is.
Hillary.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
Great
and
show.
Christina, and wow. Anyway,
Lots of
it's
fun.
so nice to see you all. Yeah.
Gigi says hello. She has writing group tonight.
Oh, well, tell her we missed her.
I will.
Yeah. So hopefully you can make the cocktail in the future.
Well, we made it tonight. We
Good. Wonderful.
Wow.
step by step with you.
Yeah.
A picture at a time, yeah.
Well, of course, we've made these cocktails for some of you in the past, so we'll do it again. Hi, Barbara.
Barbara, really?
Hi.
Hi, Barbara, hi.
Yeah, wonderful. So were there anything that I talked about that you want to know more about, or is that enough of that?
What's your favorite piece?
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
You know, I think the one that I go back to is Flow, the one with the waterfall,
Mm-hmm.
the one there.
Yep.
It was probably one of the first that I did, and so it holds a lot of power for me, I think. But I have to say, I really like most of, not most, I really like all, didn't put anything up that I was not in love with. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would hope so.
And once again, that waterfall was Dillon Falls?
Say it again.
Was that Dillon Falls?
That was Dillon Falls. Yes. Yeah.
A favorite of mine too.
Oh, nice. Well, Ken is from Lapine, right, Ken?
Prineville.
Oh, from Prineville. Okay. So near in that area.
Yep.
Yep.
Well, did I miss the walk in the woods?
Say that again, please.
Elise Myers, did I miss the walk in the woods? That's-
Oh, you know what? It's in the front window, so but I can bring it in and show it to you.
Oh, you don't, I have the card. I don't need it.
Okay.
I'll take you around so you can see it here.
Oh,
It's out in the
Yeah, right.
window, which
she's
is
got the card. Yeah.
which is a little hard to get. So
Yes. Yeah.
there's that
Nice.
one. It's on the postcard. And then here's another piece.
Oh, I like that one.
Yeah, we've been cheated.
Yeah. You always got to keep them wanting more, Steve.
Bring your checkbook, you can see them all.
And then one other one here.
I love that one too.
That one is nice.
Good.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, I forgot to mention one other thing. So if you come down, will be wearing masks. We have a limited number of people that can come into the gallery at one time if you're coming on the open days. But anyone who does come down to the gallery during my show will be entered into a drawing for the unframed etching of their choice. So, you know, it might be worth your while.
Nancy. Hi, Kathy. Nice to see you. Keeney, I wanted to ask you a question about those. I really dug those etchings
Yes.
that you did with Martha. Did you do them in Washington or down in Portland?
Well, actually, so when we did a couple of test etchings first, and we worked at her Atelier Mars. And so basically what she did is she gave me the copper plates to clean and grind. And then she put on the asphaltum for me. And actually Tom Prochaska helped as well. And then they gave them to me and I would take them back to my studio and I would do the drawing at my house. And then I would meet her over at Atelier Mars. And then she would do the acid, dip them in the acid, and then she would remove the asphaltum, and then we would do a test proof to see how it looked and whether I needed to do any more work on the etching. And then after we got them to a place where I liked them in black and white, she actually took the plates and printed them for me. And then she gave them back to me and then I hand colored them.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of back and forth.
There was a lot of back and forth.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. They're really nice. I liked them a lot.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
And speaking of the etchings, I have a question.
Yes.
It's always hard with these Zooms. We end up talking over each other. But I noticed that the etchings related to a painting in the same direction. So did you have to do the etchings backwards?
I did.
Yeah, you had to do the drawing back.
Yeah, I did the mirror image. Yeah. I'm glad have you done etching, Steve?
No.
Steven? No. So, but you knew
I've
that
done
you'd get the mirror image if you did it.
Some
Yeah.
very bad wood cuts, but that's
Same principle though, right? Because you get the mirror image.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, somebody was asking about, when you have favorites. And I think one of the things I've learned as an art spouse and having all the artwork around me is that, sometimes you do have your favorites, but when you have the pieces around you for a period of time, you develop a relationship with each one in different ways. And so sometimes that idea of, picking a favorite one is sort of like, well, hey, I don't know that I could pick a favorite of everybody who's on this Zoom meeting.
Don't go there.
Oh, I think you could.
Yes, I know you could.
Hopefully, a few you can whittle out.
We do.
Yeah, my mom is here, so
There you go.
Fine, she wins.
It's kind of like picking a favorite child.
Right.
In general, there are passages in each painting that you just love. That's sort of more how I feel about the work. And and for me, the ones that move me emotionally the most are often the ones that I care most about, because they must be really getting into the core of something really important for me. So that's really how I judge what the ones that I'm really that I love the most. Yeah.
Kini, I'm curious to know how you do your colors. Are your colors? I mean, your colors are clearly not exactly representational of what occurs in nature, but
Not even close.
But they seem to me to be themed to the environment in which you are. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your color choices.
Sometimes it's conscious. I've been doing art now for like 45 years. No, I mean 4 years. Sorry, because I'm not.
You're only 29.
I'm sorry, what now?
It's like I'm just working with color all the time. And I tend to go through cycles, and my emotional state has a lot that I don't even know about, right, until I see it later. I don't necessarily even know. I didn't really understand that these Central Oregon pieces would be so different in their palette than what I've done in Australia. I mean, it makes sense when you think about it, because all the color in Australia is so intense. It makes sense that is the memory, the subconscious memory that I would have of Australia, and that there'd be that over-the-top color. But I was surprised to see that the colors of Central Oregon are so much more. They're both more subdued, but more. They're really complex as well. They're not just bright. They're really complex color. And so, and sometimes it has to do, as I said, the show has a lot to do with having become the caregiver for my mother. And so that affects how I see the world quite a bit as well. And so I think that might have a lot to do with both the figure being less prominent and the figure being less colorful in general, and sort of being an observer more than the center of attention. Because I like being the center of attention.
What? No, say it isn't so.
It's one of those paths that one of the cycles that I'm going through, which is a really important one I need to say if I didn't say it before. I've learned so much about caring in a different way by taking care of my mother. And I think that comes out in both the color and the emotion that I'm expressing in these paintings from Central Oregon. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Really resonates a lot.
Yeah, I would think, it might. Yep. So anything else anybody wants to talk about?
Yeah, I had a question about like all the outdoor space, and just I wonder if now that we've all been staying indoors so much and can't travel as much, as you're reflecting on these or looking at them, do you feel like your impression of that place or that work has changed, or your relationship with any of them has changed, now that you're looking back at this outdoor space, and where our relationship with outdoors and nature feels to me really different right now? And just curious if anything like that was happening to you as you were looking at these.
Yeah, I understand your question. I think, again, because for the last 2 years, my world has narrowed already, even before the pandemic. I'm not able to do as much as I was before. And we were, so there was a sense of isolation a little bit, even before the pandemic for me. And in some ways, okay, this is gonna sound weird, but in some ways, at least at the beginning of the homestay stuff, it actually was a relief in some ways because, in addition, of course, to, our life together and my life with my mom, I'm also really active in Waterstone Gallery, which is an artist-run gallery. It takes a lot of time. And I'm also the president currently of the Portland Art Dealers Association. And so all of these things keep me very busy. And I have to say, I was kind of really relieved that before people discovered that you could do meetings by Zoom, I was really enjoying not having to deal with some of that other stuff. So, but to cycle back to your direct question, I am desperately wanting to get out somewhere new in nature again. I'm really needing it. David and I are planning a trip, hopefully for a month, to the Oregon coast in September for our 10th, right after our 10th wedding anniversary. And I'll use that opportunity to draw there every day. But I'm really wanting to experience a new place that I haven't been before. I mean, we've been to the Oregon coast a lot, but that whole idea, when you draw, it's you see the world in a different way than you do when you're just looking at it is wonderful, but drawing it, it actually gets in your brain and your heart and your body in a different way. And I'm really needing to experience it again. Does that sort of answer your question? I sort of danced around it.
No, absolutely. Because as I was looking at them, I was just like, oh yeah, like just sitting outside on a trail all day or being in someone's garden or a park, like, oh, I miss that. And so, yeah, just wondering.
Yeah.
As well, so absolutely.
Thank you for the question.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking forward to it too.
Indeed.
Good answer.
Yeah. Well, great. So anyone else have anything they want to talk about? No?
Well, I would just like to say, Keeney,
Hi, Kathy.
once again, hi. I'm just so impressed with the complexity and the broadness of what you've presented in the show. And it's all just wonderful. And I'm especially enjoying seeing some etchings. So that's kind of a new thing.
It is a new thing. Absolutely.
Yeah. And
yeah.
I love Dillon Falls. In 1968, I probably was in a very similar position that you were in, doing watercolors of Dillon Falls.
Oh, how wonderful.
So it brought back all that fresh memory and all the smells and the delight of hearing the water.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because, you know, normally when I've traveled, I've always wanted to go abroad to different cultures that I haven't experienced. And interestingly enough, I found this trip, you know, which is only 3 hours away, but getting to do it for a month, I found it very rewarding. Maybe not the same as going to, you know, Tahiti or Easter Island, but very rewarding in a different way. And I guess it just showed me I don't really need to go abroad to experience that all those sensations of being totally alive, which I desire and need so much.
And something about, I mean, I haven't been to Australia, but I feel like you captured the essence of the Central Oregon feeling with the pine needles and the, you know, the variety of alive and dead trees and the water. And,
that's right, I can go get it.
yeah.
There's a flash right there.
Nice.
That's
nicely
wonderful.
done.
Thank you so much. That really means a lot. You never know, right? Whether you're going to get it or not. But I think that my drawing is getting better. I mean, hopefully it always will. But I'm sort of, it's nice that I can capture the spirit of a place.
I think you did. I think you did a
Thank
very
you.
good job of it. You know, I'm from Eastern Oregon.
Oh,
And,
no.
so it is beautiful, and I love the colors, the dark blues, the interesting colors that you use in the background, and the difference between the lava and the trees and the stumps, and the fact that there's things living and dead and whatever all in. It was just beautiful. I really enjoyed it. So,
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. I appreciate it.
Elise is a friend of mine here at Willamette View.
Oh, okay.
And Cindy, wave your hand. She's a Willamette View person too.
Nice. Well, thanks for showing up tonight. I really appreciate it.
thank you. Well, we went to the last one too, where we had snacks and everything. Filmed the last.
Right on.
Yeah, the snacks in person are a lot better than
They are.
Having to do it yourself is a pain. It's
Yeah.
better when David does it.
Yeah, true. Yeah, right. Well, thanks again, everyone. I really appreciate it.
It's wonderful.
I hope that it comes to a place that you will feel comfortable to come. Of course, I understand if you can't, but
Can
if
you
I can
tell us
see-
again, when are you going to be there? You're going to be
I'm
there
gonna be
every
here,
day?
I'll be here every Saturday and Sunday from 11 to 4, except for July 4th.
This, okay.
But you can also go on and make your own appointment on Thursdays or Fridays from 11 to 4, and I would be here those days too.
Okay.
If you make an appointment. Yeah.
I have actually kind of a weird question. Have you thought about combining your and David's like art and sewing and using your box to print masks with like a bird?
Well, so David
Is
and I
she a
have
plant?
we actually have a history of doing joint projects, actually. So one thing that we did, we've often done it in the past, like every 2 years we've done a project to raise money for some trip we were taking. So one year we actually did a joint screen printing and sewing project where I silk screened 8 color prints on canvas, and then David sewed them into reusable shopping bag.
Oh my God.
So we have done that before. We've done stained glass projects where I designed them and cut out the glass and foiled them, and David soldered them. We did hand-painted Christmas ornaments of birds that we did one year. Am I forgetting something? So currently, David is sewing handmade ties on antique Indian saris.
They're beautiful.
Right. So he's working on that currently, but he hasn't taught me to sew yet. So it's really on him to do the ties. So we do project. So we did talk about doing masks, but in some way, it's for us. It sort of felt a little. Hope I don't offend anyone here, but it felt weird to do masks and sell them. To do masks and give them away would make sense to me, but to do them and sell them somehow didn't sound right to us.
Or at least not at the beginning, it didn't.
Yeah.
Right.
We'll see.
Yeah. But it's important that they're out there, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And he actually, wait, I'll be right back.
We'll miss you.
David,
Yeah.
how about doing masks and then have a raffle, and then people that are interested, I would buy into the raffle.
Well, that's a great idea.
Here he's got one.
Then you can kind of, step back from
Wow.
that. Hey, that's great.
Oh,
this is
bird.
fun.
What a surprise.
Yeah, exactly. Is it too subtle?
Oh, beautiful.
Just like you.
Yeah, exactly. Right. As always. Yes, indeed. Well, anyone else have a comment they want to make about anything? No?
You have to
Thank
see
you.
the work in person. I've had the opportunity to do that, and you really need to see it in person. It's just stunning. It's Keeney. I've known him for a
Long time.
long time. His work just gets better every single time, which I never think is possible.
Well, that's saying a lot, because for many, many years, Susan would see work in progress and she would tell me, wow, that's great. Don't screw it up. I banished her from my studio.
Well, that's the beauty of not being able to see it until it's done now.
That's right.
Because it's either screwed up or it's not screwed up.
Yeah. The beauty for us both.
Funny how it goes, Keeney, but I hear the same thing all the time.
Nice. Well, again, we'll let you go off and enjoy your cocktails and appetizers. Really, thank you so much for showing up tonight. I
Yes,
really
thank you for
appreciate
being
it. Yeah. Have a good night, everybody.
Have a great evening.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night,
Good night.
Kathy.
Hey, bye-bye.
Good night, Kathy.